They say every marriage breaks differently. Mine ended the moment a laugh floated from our bedroom that wasn't mine. If you've ever loved someone who made you smaller, this story isn't about revenge. It's about a choice that rebuilt us, or should have ruined us. My name is Rebecca, and I'm 26 years old. My husband, Williams, is 28, a banker with a smile that could melt walls and a charm that turned heads everywhere we went. We met at a friend's get-together 3 years ago, and honestly, it felt like something out of a movie. You know that moment when your eyes lock across a crowded room and the noise just fades? That was us. He made me laugh within the first 5 minutes. By the end of that night, I'd given him my number, and by the end of that week, I was already wondering if this was what falling in love felt like. Everything about him seemed perfect. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that he'd perfected that routine. Williams was a Casanova, though he hid it well behind that banker's suit and those warm brown eyes. Because the man I married wasn't who I thought, and what I asked him to do would change both of us. Before we dive in, please hit that subscribe button and join the Gender Diary family, where stories of discovery, transformation, and healing come to life. And I'd love to know, what time and country are you watching from? Drop it below. It always warms my heart to see how far our stories reach. Please watch till the end. Every story holds a moment worth feeling. The early days were like a dream I never wanted to wake from. Williams would send me flowers at work, not just on special occasions, but on random Tuesdays when he said he was thinking about me. He'd text me poetry at midnight, call me during his lunch breaks, just to hear my voice. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. Our childhoods, our dreams, the lives we wanted to build together. 6 months after we met, he proposed. It was simple, intimate, perfect. Just us on a beach at sunset, his hands trembling as he held out the ring. I said yes before he could even finish the question. The wedding came quickly after that. I wore my grandmother's veil, he smiled when I walked down the aisle, and for those first few months of marriage, I honestly believed I was the luckiest woman alive. Our home was filled with laughter, lazy Sunday mornings in bed, shared meals where we'd talk about starting a family someday. But then, slowly, things began to shift. It started small. He'd come home later than usual, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. When I'd ask about his day, he'd give vague answers, distracted, already scrolling through his phone. The good morning kisses became hurried pecks. The long conversations turned into comfortable silences, then uncomfortable ones. I told myself it was just work stress. Banking hours are brutal, I reasoned. He's tired. He's under pressure. He still loves me. I could see it in the way he'd reach for my hand in his sleep. The way he'd smile when he thought I wasn't looking. I ignored the lipstick stain on his collar once. I dismissed the unfamiliar number that kept calling his phone. I even convinced myself that the perfume was just from standing too close to a colleague in the elevator. Love makes you blind. Or maybe hope does. Either way, I chose not to see what was right in front of me. Until the day I came home early from the farmer's market. And the truth greeted me before he did. It was a Saturday morning, bright and beautiful. I'd gone to the farmer's market like I did every weekend, planning to make Williams his favorite pasta for dinner. But they were out of the fresh basil the first needed, and the backup store was closed, so I decided to just come home and improvise with what we had. I remember feeling happy as I walked up our driveway. The sun was warm on my shoulders, birds were singing, and I was thinking about how I'd surprise Williams with lunch in bed. Maybe we could reconnect, spend the afternoon just being us again. The front door was unlocked. That should have been my first clue. Williams was meticulous about locking doors. Our home had a rule. Doors locked, hearts open. That morning, only one of those was true. I stepped inside. They didn't hear the door. But I heard everything I'd tried not to, and the house was quiet. Too quiet. But then I heard it. Laughter. Soft, intimate, coming from upstairs. From our bedroom. My heart started pounding. I knew that laugh. Not his, but hers. Sarah. Our maid. I don't remember walking up those stairs. It felt like floating. Like my body was moving, but my mind was somewhere else. Somewhere safe. Somewhere this wasn't happening. But my hand pushed open that bedroom door, and there they were. Williams and Sarah, kissing. His hands in her hair, her arms around his neck, both of them so lost in each other that they didn't even hear me come in. Time stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I just stood there, watching the man I'd promised my life to, the man I'd trusted with my heart, wrapped around another woman in the bed where we'd made promises to each other. When Williams finally saw me, the color drained from his face. Sarah gasped, scrambled to fix her uniform, stammered apologies I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. But Williams just stood there, frozen, like he'd been caught in a crime he never thought he'd have to answer for. I don't know how long we stood there in that horrible silence. It felt like hours. It was probably seconds. Then the flood came, his words tumbling out in desperate, broken pieces. I'm sorry, it was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I love you. Please, Rebecca, please. I'll do anything. It won't happen again. I swear I'll change. Just please don't leave me. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't break you all at once. It shatters you slowly, piece by piece, until you're standing in the wreckage wondering who you even are anymore. I was exhausted. Exhausted from months of pretending everything was fine. Exhausted from ignoring the signs. Exhausted from loving someone who clearly didn't love me the same way. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I said the word I never thought I'd say. Divorce. He broke down. Actually, dropped to his knees, begging, crying, promising the world. And part of me, that part that still remembered the man I fell in love with, wavered. But I wasn't done talking. Then I said it. Words that would either save us or destroy us. My way or no way. Williams looked up at me, confused, desperate, willing to agree to anything if it meant I wouldn't leave. But he didn't understand what he was agreeing to. Not yet. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The same bed where I'd just caught him betraying me, and I laid it out clearly, calmly, with a steadiness that surprised even me. If you want to save this marriage, I said, you're going to do something for me. It's called feminine transformation therapy. He blinked. What? I explained it to him slowly. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about humiliation. This was about understanding. Truly understanding what it means to be vulnerable, not punishment. Perspective, not costume. Permission. To be seen, to exist in a world that constantly judges your appearance, your emotions, your worth based on how well you perform femininity. You're going to learn what it's like to walk in my shoes, I told him. Literally and figuratively. You're going to embrace feminine expression, the way I move through the world every day, the emotional labor, the self-awareness, the gentleness that you've always taken for granted. William stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Then he laughed. A short, disbelieving sound. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Rebecca, that's insane. You want me to, what? Wear dresses? Act like a woman? That's not gonna fix anything. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and headed for the door. Then we're done here. Wait, he scrambled to his feet, panic flooding his face. Wait, please, just explain it to me. What exactly do you mean? I turned back to him. You'll start with the basics. Skincare, household chores, emotional conversations where you actually talk about your feelings instead of bottling them up or distracting yourself with work or other women. You'll replace your pride with gentleness, your walls with vulnerability, your performance of masculinity with authentic humanity. And if I do this, he said slowly, you'll stay? If you do this sincerely. I corrected, we'll see. He looked at me for a long moment. I could see the war happening behind his eyes. His ego fighting against his fear of losing me. The absurdity of what I was asking versus the very real possibility of watching me walk away forever. Finally, he whispered, okay, your way. I nodded. My way or no way. That night, we started small. I taught him my skincare routine. Cleansing, toning, moisturizing. But the biggest shift came when I made him sit down with me and talk, really talk, about his feelings. Not his excuses, not his justifications, but the actual emotions underneath. The fear, the insecurity, the ways he'd been taught that being a man meant never showing weakness. It was uncomfortable for him. Painful, even. But for the first time since we'd met, I saw something real beneath the charm. And in that moment, I realized something that would change everything. Helping him see my world might awaken something entirely new inside him. 3 weeks into the therapy, I decided it was time for the next phase. Because this was never about punishment. It was always about perspective. I'd spent the afternoon preparing while Williams was at work. I'd gone shopping, chosen carefully, and now everything was laid out on our bed. A gown that I'd selected specifically for this moment. When Williams came home that evening, I could see the exhaustion in his shoulders. The therapy had been harder on him than he'd expected. The emotional vulnerability, the constant self-reflection, the dismantling of walls he'd spent a lifetime building. It was breaking him down in ways he didn't know he needed. I have something for you, I said softly. He followed me upstairs, and when he saw the dress on the bed, he stopped in the doorway. For a long moment, he just stared at it. It was beautiful. A form-fitting two-tone gown that I'd chosen with intention. The upper portion was white, with intricate pattern details, almost like lace, woven through with delicate brown and black threads that created an elegant, sophisticated look. The lower half was a rich chocolate brown with vertical white stripes that created an hourglass silhouette, the fabric flowing gracefully all the way to the floor. The fabric cooled his skin. The weight at his hem grounded him like truth. I'd paired it with sparkling heels, minimal jewelry, just simple earrings and a bracelet, and I'd prepared a subtle makeup look. Nothing dramatic, just enough to soften his features. "Rebecca," he said quietly, "I don't know if I can do this." I walked over to him, took his hand. "You promised. My way." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and nodded. I helped him undress, helped him step into the gown. I zipped it up slowly, adjusted the fit, then guided him to sit at my vanity, where I gently applied the makeup. Foundation to even his skin tone. A touch of blush. Soft brown eyeshadow. Mascara to lengthen his lashes. A nude lipstick. Nothing excessive. Just enough to see himself differently. Then I styled his hair into a chic updo, pinning it carefully, making sure every strand was in place. When I was finished, I stepped back. "Look at yourself." Williams hesitated, then slowly turned to face the full-length mirror. What I saw in his expression in that moment, I'll never forget it. It wasn't disgust or humiliation like I'd half expected. It was shock, yes, but beneath that, something else. Something softer. He stood there for a long time, just looking at himself, taking in the curve of the gown, the way the colors complemented his skin tone, the way the heels changed his posture, made him stand taller but also more gracefully. The way the makeup didn't hide him but somehow revealed something he'd never let himself see before. His eyes filled with joy. "This is..." He paused, his voice breaking. "This is what you feel every day?" I moved to stand beside him, looking at both our reflections. "Yes, this is me, and this could be you too." He touched the fabric of the gown gently, ran his fingers over the patterns. I don't know how to describe it, vulnerable, exposed, but also, he struggled to find the words. Peaceful, like I don't have to perform anymore, like I can just be. He looked at me through the mirror and whispered, "I've been rehearsing a man. I want to live as a person." I squeezed his hand. That's what femininity has always been for me. Not a costume, not a performance. Just another way of existing in the world, one that society often dismisses or devalues, but one that holds so much power in its softness. We stood there together in front of that mirror, and I watched something shift in Williams, some wall crumbling that had been holding him prisoner for years. That night, the mirror didn't reflect a joke. It reflected an awakening. The weeks that followed were transformative in ways I never could have anticipated. Williams didn't just go through the motions of the therapy. He embraced it, sincerely, completely. Like a man who'd been given permission to finally be human instead of just masculine. He started journaling his feelings every night, pages and pages of thoughts he'd never allowed himself to express. He'd read passages to me sometimes, his voice shaking, as he shared fears and insecurities he'd buried since childhood. The pressure to always be strong. The shame of crying. The loneliness of never being allowed to need support. He began helping with the household chores without being asked. And not just superficially. He learned to see the invisible labor that keeps a home running. The planning, the organizing, the constant mental load of remembering what needs to be done and when. He cooked dinner for us, and when the sauce didn't turn out right, instead of getting frustrated and giving up like the old Williams would have, he laughed at himself, asked for help, and tried again. The emotional distance that had grown between us over those months before the betrayal, it started to fade. We talked late into the night again. Really talked, the way we used to when we first fell in love. But this time it was deeper, more honest, because Williams was finally showing me the parts of himself he'd always hidden. I saw gradual softness emerging in him. Patience where there used to be irritation. Understanding where there used to be dismissal. His laughter became warmer, less performative, more genuine. One evening, about 2 months in, I came home to find him in the kitchen, wearing a flowing lavender dress, humming while he chopped vegetables for dinner. He looked up when I walked in, and his face lit up with a smile so pure and unguarded that it took my breath away. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi," I replied, setting down my bag. And in that moment, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. This wasn't the man who'd betrayed me. This was someone new. Someone better. Someone real. We also had to address Sarah. She'd been dismissed immediately after the incident, but the wound was still there, unspoken, hanging between us. One night, Williams brought it up without my prompting. "I need to apologize properly," he said. "Not to Sarah. I owe her nothing. But to you. For what I did. For the disrespect, the betrayal, the way I took you for granted." I listened as he spoke, not with the desperate excuses of before, but with genuine remorse and understanding of the harm he'd caused. I thought I could have everything. he continued, his voice steady but thick with emotion. The perfect wife at home and the excitement of something forbidden on the side. I didn't think about you as a person with feelings and needs and worth. I thought about you as an object that belonged to me. Something stable while I played around. He took my hand. This therapy, it's made me see what I couldn't before. How much emotional labor you carry. How vulnerable you make yourself every single day just by existing in a world that judges women constantly. How much strength it takes to be soft in a society that sees softness as weakness. Tears rolled down his cheeks, smudging the light makeup he still wore, sometimes even in private moments. I'm so sorry, Rebecca. I'm so deeply, truly sorry. I pulled him close, and we held each other in the quiet of our living room, two people who'd been broken finding their way back to wholeness. Our physical intimacy rekindled naturally after that, but it was different now. It wasn't about lust or possession. It was about appreciation, gratitude, genuine connection. When we touched, it was with tenderness. When we made love, it was with vulnerability. For the first time in years, we reached for each other's hands not from habit, but from gratitude. 6 months after that terrible day when I'd walked through our bedroom door, our home had become something I never thought possible, a place of genuine peace. William still dressed femininely at home, and it had become so natural that I barely noticed it anymore. It wasn't therapy anymore. It wasn't rebellion or performance. It was just him, the full spectrum of who he was when he allowed himself to be honest. I'd come down some mornings to find him making breakfast in a soft blue robe, his hair pulled back, humming to music only he could hear, and I'd feel this overwhelming sense of contentment. This was my husband. This was my partner. This was the person I'd chosen to build a life with, now fully present in a way he'd never been before. We went to therapy together too. Real therapy with a professional counselor who helped us navigate the complex emotions of betrayal, forgiveness, and rebuilding trust. Williams was open in those sessions in ways that amazed me, talking about his childhood, his father's rigid expectations, the ways he'd learned to hide his emotions and perform confidence even when he felt lost. One quiet evening in early autumn, we were sitting on our back porch watching the sunset. Williams was wearing a simple cream-colored skirt and a soft sweater, his feet tucked under him, a cup of tea warming his hands. "Rebecca," he said softly, not looking at me. "I need to say something." I waited, giving him space. "I'm sorry," his voice cracked. "I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. For what I did. For who I was. For how close I came to losing you." I reached over and took his hand. "Williams, please, let me finish." He turned to face me, and his eyes were red but clear. "You gave me something I didn't deserve. A second chance, but more than that, you gave me permission to be human, to be vulnerable, to exist without the weight of constant performance." He squeezed my hand. I thought being a man meant never showing weakness, never admitting fear, never being soft. I thought I had to be the provider, the protector, the one who had it all together. And in trying to live up to that impossible standard, I became someone cruel, someone selfish, someone who hurt the person he loved most. Tears streamed down his face now, catching the golden light of the setting sun. This therapy, your way, it didn't just save our marriage. It saved me, from myself. From a life of emotional isolation and performance. From never really knowing what it means to connect with another person. I was crying too now. You did the work. I just gave you the path. He smiled through his tears. You gave me more than that. You gave me grace when I deserved judgment. You gave me understanding when I deserved anger. You gave me love when I deserved to be left. Looking back now, I realized that the day I walked through that bedroom door and saw my husband's betrayal was both an ending and a beginning. It was the death of the marriage I thought I had, but it was also the birth of something more authentic, more real, more sustainable. Healing doesn't come from punishment. It comes from perspective. I wanted something different, something real. And through that learning, he found freedom. True intimacy begins when pride ends. Our marriage now isn't perfect. We still have difficult days, still have disagreements, still have to actively work on communication and trust. But it's built on a foundation of honesty that we never had before, and that makes all the difference. Love did save us, and so did understanding. So that's my story, the story of how my marriage broke, and how we chose to rebuild it in a completely different way. That transformation is possible when we're willing to let go of who we thought we were supposed to be and embrace who we actually are. That sometimes the most radical act of love is to demand that your partner truly see you, and to be willing to truly see them in return. Thank you for listening to my story, for staying with me through the heartbreak and the healing, for being part of the Gender Diary family. Before you go, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I'd love to know, what time and country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. It always warms my heart to see how far our stories reach. Until next time, this is Rebecca, reminding you that the strongest love is the one brave enough to demand truth. I used to want my old husband back. Now I wake beside the man who finally came home. The end.